calling this meeting to order. I'll entertain a motion to go into executive session pursuant to Rhode Island General Laws 42-46, subsection 4 and subsection 5.
I'll make the motion to approve.
Thank you. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Thank you. All that say aye?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you. Calling this meeting to order. If we can please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. Thank you. We only took one vote to seal our executive session meetings pursuant to Rhode Island General Law, Section 42-46, subsection 4, and subsection 5. No other votes were taken. Thank you. Next item, please.
Next item is student liaisons, Gayatri Bukta, East Providence High School.
Good evening, everyone. I want to begin by congratulating the cast and crew of our spring musical In the Heights. They had a very successful show with great turnout from their families, the students, and the community at large. Last week, we wrapped up the third quarter on Thursday, just in time for the spring break, and we also had our band festival that was held here in the auditorium on Wednesday and Thursday. We also had a day of silence organized by the GSA last Thursday that was to bring awareness to bullying of LGBT students, and that seemed to be successful. So far in sports, we've had a great start to the spring season. Lacrosse, tennis, volleyball, softball, and baseball all kicked off their seasons with a win, and the track team also had victories as well. When we come back next week, we begin fourth quarter on Monday. It's the final stretch of the school year, and we've got SATs and PSATs next Tuesday and Wednesday. That's also going to be held in conjunction with the biliteracy seal testing those days. That Thursday, that's a packed week when we get back. That Thursday is the Empty Bowls fundraiser that is run by the Ceramics program, and it raises funds for the organization Good Neighbors of East Providence. And then the Friday, we have our NHS annual paint night. That's a fundraiser as well. And then that Saturday, the 22nd, is Earth Day. So the Environmental Club is holding a cleanup of Crescent Park Beach. That's an opportunity for students to get community service hours as well. And then to wrap up April, we have our summer job fair that'll be held during wind blocks here in the auditorium. It's a great opportunity for students to meet potential employers and maybe earn some money over the summer. That's all I have for tonight. Thank you so much.
Next is Elska Keys Alario, Riverside Middle School.
Good evening, members of the school committee. My name is Elska Alario, and I'm an 8th grader at RMS. I'm grateful for this opportunity to speak today, since it's not something I've done before, but a skill I would love to learn with further experiences. To start off on the earlier events at RMS, on the 17th of March, the 6th grade band and chorus had a field trip to the East Providence elementary schools. They performed for the 4th and 5th graders to demonstrate their musical talents and spark interest for the future musicians of the middle school. In addition to this, RMS participated in the 7th annual Unified Champion School Plunge on Saturday, March 25th, and surpassed our goal of $1,000, raising almost twice that at $1,993 towards Special Olympics Rhode Island. From March 20th through the 31st, a Pennies for Patients fundraiser took place, where students and faculty raised $300 in total towards the Leukemia and Lymphoma Society. As spring has finally begun, so have spring sports, including unified basketball, track, baseball, and softball. On April 25th, both the boys' baseball and girls' softball have the Mayor's Cup, their first home game of the season, Riverside versus Martin. Continuing on spring events, 7th graders attended an informational meeting regarding the selection process for the NJHS on April 3rd. And on May 1st, the National Junior Honor Society will be having a spring cleanup, including those 7th graders, as well as any other students wanting to participate in a great opportunity to clean up litter from our school grounds. Moreover, an assembly took place with all students by grade level to discuss RICAS, making sure everyone felt confident. Some students worked with the guidance counselors to create motivational signs in the halls, which are nice messages of encouragement for everyone ahead of testing. Before the break, students worked hard to complete the English portion of RICAS, and now we'll be preparing for the math, which will happen the first week of May. To wrap it up, the 8th graders' Washington, D.C. trip is coming up on May 30th through the 1st. Those planning on participating are doing the final preparations with our social studies department head, Layla McCarthy. She has organized the trip, and we are appreciative of this wonderful opportunity. That's all the recent news from Riverside Middle. Are there any questions? All right, thank you for allowing me to speak.
Next item is the consent agenda.
Are there any comments or motions in regards to the consent agenda? If not, I'll entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda. Is there a motion to approve the consent agenda?
I'll make a motion to approve the consent agenda.
Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Thank you. All that say aye.
Aye.
The consent agenda passes.
Next item is public comments.
We do not have any public comments for tonight. We did receive a written comment, and that will be filed along with our meeting's minutes for today. Next item, please.
Next item is PTO, PTA, EPLAC reports.
Next item.
Next item is superintendent's report, facilities update, and finance update.
Thank you. Mr. Chris Murphy will be coming up shortly. Please bear with us.
Good evening. We remain in good financial shape for the current fiscal year. There are no real items to point out for you at this time. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. I'm going to ask our director, Chris Murphy, to make the presentation, and then shortly after that, I'll entertain a motion to move up our presentations for the four action items that we have for tonight as well. But I figured for the purpose of being in a chronological order, we'll start off with the high school update, and then we'll move on to the new project.
Understood. Good evening, Chairman and committee. Just some brief updates on some major building projects we have going forward. The window replacement project at the Riverside Middle School is moving forward rapidly. After having awarded the contract 3 weeks ago to Lockheed Architectural Corporation, they have visited Riverside numerous times for measurements and on-site assessments of things that they had questions about. So that is moving forward rapidly. Substantial completion for that window project at Riverside is September 2024. Also, the window replacement projects for Orlo Elementary and Silver Spring Elementary are slated to begin as soon as school is dismissed this summer, with the substantial completion taking place at or about the middle of August. So they will not be in the way, they have assured us, for the beginning of school. I'm pleased to report that after 5 months of proposals and planning with our OPM and our construction management firm, the High School Building Committee is prepared to recommend to the school committee that we move forward with the current agreed upon repair plan for the 30-inch drainage problem we have in the back. This plan, barring any unforeseen circumstances or weather-related issues, will result in a substantial completion of the 30-inch drain line repair on or about mid-June. This will include the resetting of the Musco light pole on its existing base. Lastly, some very good news. We had the grand opening of the Townie Pride Food Pantry last week. The food pantry, funded and supported by Stop and Shop and We Share Hope, is fully stocked and ready for business. It is housed in what used to be the Culinary Arts Kitchen in the old Career Technical Center, now, of course, the admin building. So if you get a chance, we recommend that you stop down and visit what is a rather extraordinary effort, culmination of efforts by a lot of people that has been dedicated to the elimination of food insecurity in our district. Very good. It's good for everybody, is what it boils down to. That's all I had.
Thank you.
You bet.
I'll entertain a motion to move up our presenters to above our policy committee report. Do I have a motion?
I'll make the motion.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you. Will there be a presentation on the projector?
Yes.
Okay. If you guys would like, we can sit up here on the front row so we can look at our presenter and look at the projector as well. That's optional, of course, but I wanted to let you guys know that that's an option at least. Thank you. Whenever you're ready.
Good evening, Ms. Chair and school committee members. I'm Ann De Silva, Senior Project Manager from Peregrine Group. I'm here today with our team members, Justin Tebow and Samantha Lane from AI3. We're here tonight to present to you our updated schematic design and proposed submission for your consideration and approval to the RIDE School Building Authority. And we will be going through today the RIDE schedule, updated design from our Stage 2 submission the fall of last year, and we will also be going through our budget and value management. This is one of the steps that we need to just basically go through our checklist for the design review portal. With that being said, I'll turn it over to Justin Tebow to go over the schedule.
Thanks, Ann. Next slide, please. So, just to set the tone, obviously the project is moving forward. It was voted to move through the Stage 2 schematic design submission last fall, successful town vote. And so we've actually moved into the Stage 3 portion of the project. As you can see on the screen, it began again last November. And there are 2 submissions for the Stage 3 schematic design development portion, as you can see in dark blue. We're looking for, or we're talking specifically about the first one here. So the schematic design submission, that's where we are today. And that's what we're going to go over, high-level overview of the packet of the items included. And essentially what this submission is that it's the Stage 2 schematic design, just further defined. Moving things forward, there's been some additional investigation in the existing facility. There's been a lot of additional meetings with the city officials, with the district, and so on and so forth. So basically progressing the project. So right now we're at the stage 3 schematic design submission, just laying out all of the future submissions for the project, because if you recall, one of the stipulations for RIDE is that the project needs to be fully designed and out the door by the end of the year. So staying within that constraint, what's up on the screen are the milestone submissions. So the next, after tonight's conversation, the next one is actually the design development submission at the end of May, the 90% construction document submission at the end of October, and then the 100% documents at the end of November. These deadlines meet the requirements of RIDE and their funding agreement with the district. Next slide, please. So looking specifically as far as what is included in the actual schematic design submission, this is essentially the index, the table of contents of the documents that are going to be submitted. So it's broken down into a handful of items. Project report. So at this stage, it's a lot of narratives. It's a lot of documents as far as noting, okay, your goals, sustainability goals, for example, talking about building code, talking about life cycle costs, and it's a lot of narratives as far as how the design and the development of the documents is going to progress through the life of the design portion of the project, basically through the end of the year. Another component is project cost. So at this stage of the game, the schematic design submission here, we had it professionally cost estimated with a professional cost estimator who is the leader in educational estimating. So the estimates are going to also occur throughout the life of the project for the design. So it'll occur again at design development, it'll occur again at 90%, and then 100% documents, there's no estimate because the bid is the estimate essentially. So we'll talk a little bit about cost estimate, the VE list, and paths to budget. There was a slight overage, so we did have to have a conversation and work through some value management items with the building committee, so we'll talk specifically what those are in the future, actually at the very end of the slides. Drawings will be included. Again, further developing from the previous stage 2 schematic design submission, and then a handful of other items. Again, a lot of the same items that were submitted for the stage 2, just with tweaks and modifications based on the meetings and the additional information. Next slide, please. So a quick reminder, total building area, we're looking at currently just under 170,000 gross square feet right here. And that is comprised of almost 135,000 in new construction and just over 35,000 in renovation. So that renovation scope is the gymnasium, the auditorium, and some of the supporting spaces. The new construction, if you recall, is actually wrapping around that existing to remain components, the gymnasium and the auditorium primarily. So 2 items I wanted to flag. There is a slight variation in square foot numbers from the previous submission. The previous submission had a total project size of just over 170,000, now we're just under. That is based on just further developing in efficiencies in building design. So really looking at the layout, the organization, and ways to reduce the footprint. That number was not reduced, or it was reduced not by cutting any program area. So program remained exactly the same, everything area-wise remains. That reduction was based solely on building organization, circulation, and building efficiencies within the space. Another item I wanted to just quickly point out is the ratio of new construction to renovation. As I mentioned, we've had additional investigations, site investigations on site. We've actually had the existing component that is remaining scanned digitally. So it's all 3D scanned, and through further investigation, we're able to further define that line of what is going to remain versus what is new construction. So the ratio has shifted slightly from what it was previously reported. However, it's still within the total area, actually slightly less with that 169,884 gross square feet. So a couple other items, 3-story middle school academic wing, 2-story pre-K wing. two-story new construction public core, and I'll go over the floor plans really quick to point that out. And then the two-story renovated gymnasium and auditorium. Obviously, the existing gymnasium and auditorium are two-story spaces. That is to remain. A couple items about construction overview. Construction manager at risk delivery method was selected. It's going to be a phased occupancy construction and approximately 32 months for the construction duration. Next slide, please. So looking at the floor plans, they look very similar, if you recall, from the previous submission. And to be honest, as far as major shifts, that really didn't happen. It's more minor tweaks and adjustments based on programming meetings. So we've actually had two rounds of programming meetings, 3 days each. So 6 full days of programming, talking with every staff member in Martin, but also district-wide if appropriate. So for instance, food service. So based on their feedback and conversations, there have been some slight modifications, moving an office here, shifting some access points there. So really, globally, nothing significant though. It's still looking at the academic core for the middle school at the top. So that's a 3-story portion, 6th grade on the first floor, 7th grade on the second floor, and 8th grade on the third floor. This center portion here, sort of the left side of it, that is the renovated existing portion. Gymnasium is shown in orange, auditorium is shown in purple, with the new construction component here, student dining in yellow, and then the administration, guidance, nursing component in red and pink in the front, and then the pre-K wing located at the bottom, 2-story pre-K wing, 8 classrooms on the first floor, 8 classrooms on the second floor. Next slide, please. Looking at the second floor, again, stacking for building efficiency. Starting at the top, academic core for the middle school, so this is the second floor, so it's grade 7. In the center here in pink is the library media center, and then on the bottom here is the pre-K component. Couple items just to sort of highlight. If it is blue or light blue, that's classroom space. If it is green, it is technology and vocational space. Red is administration and guidance, and so on and so forth. So those are the big components here within the global footprint of the building. Next slide, please. So as I mentioned, the academic core of the middle school component is 3 stories. So this is that 3rd floor. It's the uppermost portion, so it would be 8th grade up here. We don't need 3 stories for the remainder of the building, so actually as the building goes up, the massing is reduced. So the only 3-story portion is that northern portion for the 8th grade. Again, providing easy access and vertical circulation with 3 stair towers, 1 on the left, 1 in the center, and 1 on the right for students to circulate up and down throughout the facility. Next slide, please. So before we start talking about cost, this is a slide that we actually put together. Okay. Site plan, and then we'll talk rendering. So site plan, what is shown on the screen and what is in your packet, this is what is formally being submitted to RIDE for the Stage 3 schematic design submission. And the reason why I phrased it that way is that this is by no means the final site plan. There have been further conversations at the building committee level to further define and address some concerns with the site plan. And that is in parallel. However, the site plan has not been voted on and sort of flushed out to formally submit to RIDE. In the conversation we had with RIDE, they were actually quite probably a 20-minute conversation just on the site plan alone. They identified some comments and concerns, and we actually walked them through some of the optional site plans that had been being discussed. So we're actually submitting those as part of the packet, but as supplemental because they're not official, they haven't been voted on, they haven't been vetted. So what is up on the screen is the actual formal submission. However, it is by no means the final submission at all. So for instance, looking at circulation, circulation patterns, parking locations, the pre-K playground component. These are all being looked at for site efficiency and will be updated as the project progresses. By the time the design development submission is submitted, which is the next submission, it will be flushed out, it'll be voted on and moved forward, but it was too early within that process to include it. So, next slide, please. So, real quick before talking about cost, I did want to show a handful of renderings. So, what we want this to be from the design team's perspective is a collaboration with the district, with the building committee. Ultimately, it is your building. So what was pulled together here, and it's oriented so left, right. So essentially the top two images are option 1, option 2 is in the middle, and then option 3 are the two images across the bottom. So this was presented at the March 13th building committee meeting. These essentially 6 renderings, and it was open for conversation. We provided sort of a narrative as far as why we're doing certain things the way we are. So for instance, you can see on the top image here on the left, there's a lot of glazing in the front, whereas this one here, we have some reduction. So a lot of different options, and it led to a very productive conversation with the building committee. They identified quickly option 1 on the left and option 3 on the right as the 2 favorable views. And so it was productive in that it didn't only identify those 2 views, but also there was a lot of comments of why those 2 views were selected. Is it the scale of the building? Is it the amount of glazing? Is it the colors? Is it the proportions, the textures, the shading and shadowing, etc.? So why are these 2 views? Why is everybody gravitating towards those? So what this does is that it allows the design team to further refine the exterior design based on that feedback. Excuse me. So this is sort of giving us the roadmap moving forward as far as how to tweak and adjust and modify the exterior. So next slide, please. Okay. Turn it over to Ann to talk total project budget real quick.
Thanks, Justin. So I won't go through each line item, but the approved budget column here with a total of the $128.4 million, that was what was submitted to RIDE as part of the Stage 2 submission and approved by the building and the school committee. So our hard costs in the fall were $104 million. That was as estimated by the same estimator that we used for our SD Stage 3. Again, as Justin had stated earlier, our estimator is actually one of the leading estimators in the area here. Along with that, we also had carried a contingency, and we had also, as part of the approved budget, just estimated all of the soft costs and owner's costs. The FF&E numbers are as prescribed by RIDE, and they don't change from the approved budget to the SD Stage 3. So the difference that we see here on the SD Stage 3 column, now that we have updated the SD schematic design drawings and plans, our hard costs did shift, and we have actually targeted about $5 million. That's trade costs and construction manager markups. So that's kind of our value management target that we will be going through further after this slide. So that being said, we also wanted to make sure that we're carrying an appropriate percentage for construction contingency. We did see in our soft costs some savings on the actual proposals for A&E fees as well as OPM fees. All of the other owner and project soft costs are currently staying as is, and the owner soft cost contingency below, which is the 5% of soft costs, we're maintaining, again, just that 5% number. Next slide. So I'll be turning it over to Justin, but I did, again, just want to point out here, Our approved hard cost budget in stage 2 was $104 million. Based on our updated budget, we know that we need to save or reduce the amount by 3.6. That's direct trade cost. So the 5 million that I was showing in the previous page includes, again, all of the markups: insurance, overhead fees, GCs, general conditions, and general requirements. We do need to submit this as part of our RIDE submission because we need to illustrate to RIDE and yourselves that, you know, we can get this project on back to budget. And we'll be going through this. It's an iterative process as we go through design development and then through construction documents.
Yeah, so essentially the top two numbers, the 104 million, and the 3.7, we'll call it just for conversation's sake. That 3.7 really is the target for reduction. So the path to that reduction is, from the design standpoint, what we do to assist is really break it down into 4 categories. The categories are listed on the left. So the first category is alternates. It's keeping items in the project, however, it's shifting them to be alternates so it's above that project budget line, that 104 number. What that does is that if there are savings at bid time, it allows you to pull that back, that scope item back into the project. These are items that are typically easily broken out. So for instance, a synthetic turf field versus a natural turf field, which was an example here at the high school. So it's items like that that are easily able to be broken out. The other 3 below, level 1, level 2, and level 3 priorities. So what we've done is identify a number of items of cost savings and budget management and stuff like that. But to further assist the district and everybody of understanding what it actually is, we've identified these 3 priorities. A level 1 priority are items that we recommend taking. They're typical in school construction. They don't impact the functionality of the building or the educational delivery. A level 2 priority, items that are open for discussion. Some of these may be district specific. Some of them are typical in schools. Some of them are not. So these are really where a lot of the conversation and the back and forth begins. And then level 3 priority, items that may impact function, maintenance, and durability. These are like the no-fly zone. We don't want to go there if at all possible, but they are an option to get back on budget. So what we're showing here with this red dashed line is essentially what we had to work through and to accept. So I'll go over specific numbers, but what that means is that if we accept the alternates, if we accept all of level 1, and if we accept some of level 2, that is our 3.7 million reduction, and that brings us back onto budget. Next slide, please. So looking specifically at, okay, let's look at the alternates first. These are the items that were identified as easily being able to be broken out per scope and could ultimately come back into the project in the future depending on future cost estimates and potential bid savings. So the first item, the auditorium paint refresh. So that's painting the existing auditorium. That can be done at any time. It can be brought back at any point, but there is a dollar value associated with that. Next item, gymnasium equipment. Again, the existing gymnasium is functional, but this would just provide new equipment if there were cost savings. So it's talking basketball, hoops, etc. Next item is projection screens and digital display, basically some form of projection and display within the student commons area. 4th item on the list is looking at the heating system. So currently it's designed as an all-electric building. What this item here does is actually aligns it with this building right now. So it is a natural gas fired high condensing boiler. Same system, that's what is in this current building that we're in right now. And then the 5th item is removing the lightning protection from the building. It's the lightning rods around the top of the building, which is a common occurrence as far as an item to add or remove. So all of these alternate items add up to, on the bottom left, 1.7, almost $1.8 million. So just by shifting those above that 104 million line, it reduces it reduces the total project budget of that target of what we need to get to. Next slide, please. So now looking at some of the level 1 items, because that 1.7 in alternates wasn't enough to get to our 3.7 goal. Starting, we categorize this building exterior on the left, reducing gross square footage and reducing floor-to-floor height. So again, this is just further analyzing the building, the efficiencies, the layouts, the configuration, and actually continuing to evaluate and reduce the footprint of the building as well as the height of the building. Based on our further analysis of the systems, we also can reduce the floor-to-floor height by 8 inches only, and it would still meet the needs and provide appropriate ceiling heights within the space. A couple other exterior items is looking at materials of the exterior, replacing fiber cement with brick, and reducing some of the exterior signage and branding. Again, not totally removing it, just looking at creative and selective ways of where it can be. Interior items, replacing some screens with digital displays, looking at lab equipment that doesn't belong because it doesn't support science curriculum. So for instance, fume hoods. Fume hoods are not required based on the curriculum, based on the chemicals used. And so those are removed from the estimate, and then reducing the casework within the building globally, working through that process. That number here was roughly 10% of just the global casework. Systems on the right, looking at the metal deck for the roof, just actually in this case increasing the height of it from a 1.5 to a 3-inch deck, using some different materials for piping and electrical feeders, as well as looking at the site amenities that are currently shown and really getting a better understanding of quantity for all of those items. So level 1 items equals 1.4, almost 1.5, somewhere around there. So if you add the alternates in level 1, we're at 3.24. Again, our target is 3.7. So next slide, please. So this is where we had to dip into level 2 a little bit. Start from the right, work our way left, because it's easy. Systems, doesn't impact or no items taken. Building interior, nothing taken. The only items included for level 2 was actually related to the building exterior. So again, it's further evaluating the exterior materials and looking at where we can selectively utilize brick instead of fiber cement, and fiber cement instead of metal panel. So really just looking at the exterior materials. Again, those renderings that I had shown, that design intent will remain. It's just looking at what additional materials we could utilize to continue that. So these adjustments here won't impact that design intent. So taking the handful of level 2 building exterior items, that's almost $500,000. So that gets us to, if we take all of those categories, it's 3.7, just over 3.7 million. Our target was just under 3.7. So that brings us back onto budget. One thing to note is that the alternates, again, are above the line, so they can work their way back into the project depending on future estimates, depending on future market conditions, as well as bid results. The items in level 1 and level 2 had to be removed permanently from the project just to move forward. So that's how that worked itself out. But essentially, like I said, we barely had to take anything from level 2. We didn't even talk about level 3. And the level 1 items were pretty straightforward. And again, none of these items impact educational delivery within the facility. That is our main goal. This is a school. It needs to continue to function as a school. So anything that impacts educational delivery is at the very, 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 very bottom of the list. So next slide. I think that was it, actually. So at this point, yeah, did you have anything else? Okay. Okay, so yeah, we can pause, open it up for questions if there's on any questions, and then if not, we can turn it over to Ann.
Thank you very much for the presentation. I'll entertain any questions, concerns for either of our presenters tonight.
I have a question regarding this structure that is proposed here.
This, what, can you elaborate?
Going up, adding the floors on the original foundation.
No. So to reiterate, the new facility is not utilizing existing foundations or footings or anything like that. The new, if you recall, sort of that northern academic wing, the 3-story component,
Yes.
that's actually constructed where the current parking lot is in that sort of roundabout area. And so that is going to be the initial phase, is to get that built, because all the students need to shift up to there. And then once students are occupying that space, then the existing classroom core is going to be demolished, and then the pre-K and that central admin space is going to be constructed. So we're not utilizing any of the existing footings, foundations, anything like that.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions or comments?
Do we have a general number for the enrollment capacity that we expect this building to have?
Yeah, so in one of your slides, the summary slide, it's like 2 or 3, it notes 476 students. That is based on RIDE enrollment projections. What we've done is actually looked at flexible spaces and to allow a greater capacity within that, as far as scheduling and fit out for teaching spaces and stuff like that. So there is some flexibility within that number, even though that number there notes 476.
Thank you.
Thank you. Hey, kind of going off that, just curious if you could touch on if that number was right under 500, why we would budget out for furniture, fixtures, equipment, and technology for 702 students?
Yeah, 702 is including the pre-K component. So if you have the 476 plus the 200 plus pre-K, that gets you your 700 number.
So I'm hoping you can just touch a little bit on who was in the decision-making process and, for the alternates, level 1, level 2, level 3 priorities. Just a little bit of how that whole process happens, who was involved, and that kind of thing.
Yeah, absolutely. So multiple, a lot of individuals. So the design team, obviously, the owner's project manager, Peregrine, was involved. We had the superintendent, director of finance. We had facilities involved. We had the building committee co-chairs involved. And then ultimately was brought to the building committee last night for discussion and future conversation. One thing to note again about the alternates is that those can come back in the future. They're not off the table. So.
Also just want to reiterate, as they had mentioned, the plan that is going to continue to evolve, that is not the finalized, building what we're looking at in this presentation. So I just wanted to just remind everyone that again, that will continue to change as the project, goes on, whether it's, needs that have presented or whether it depends on the market as well. I'm sure that's something that is taken to consideration, especially with how materials are currently priced at. So I know that's something that they are very mindful of currently as well, which is very different from where we were at with the high school building project. Are there any other additional questions, comments?
Kind of just looking off of our current enrollment totals, we're seeing 607 students currently enrolled at Martin Middle School. So why is our projection so under that number currently?
Yeah, so demographic studies have indicated a dip in enrollment. That is where that 476 number came from. And they look at a handful of things. They look at birth rates in the city. They look at as far as, so that's a big one. They also look at previous developments or developments in the works for housing. They look at home sales. They look at the average age of the current residents within the city. So there's a lot of different factors that provide those numbers. That number there is actually projected 5 years out, not like next year or anything like that. And 5 years out is the most, it's the most accurate number, because at that point you already have things through permitting, and you can't speculate that much beyond 5 years. So that number is your 5-year projection based on all those studies for the demographics, and ultimately that is what RIDE identified as the enrollment for the project.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you. It just seems like 5 years from now we're essentially expecting about a near 20% dip in enrollment. How long, kind of the duration of the lasting effect of this building? What would be the maximum occupancy level for 30 years from now?
Right, yeah, and that I do not know off my head, but as I mentioned, there's definitely room for scheduling. There's room for looking at additional spaces, these flex spaces. There is definitely additional capacity that can work to address any increase that you would see.
And then I'm hoping maybe Jenny, or is there anyone that could provide myself or whomever may want with just some data in terms of historical data of enrollment numbers? Especially at the two schools where we're currently going to be, Waddington and Martin, just to have that, just to be able to see that historical data, and to kind of just get a scope as we move forward.
I can definitely make sure that is ready for the next, or whenever possible. I'll make sure to have that sent out to all of us to look at. And just to add on to what you said, actually, also, that's one of our big issues with the current building, is that it doesn't allow for that flexibility and change in enrollment. So because of that, it seems like that was heavily considered for this new project as well, for that flexibility, because we don't know how much it may be changing throughout the years. And unfortunately, that wasn't taken into account for this current high school, which is why for the middle school, which is why we can see it's difficult to use up all the space that there is in that school, because a lot of it goes very unused, unfortunately. Just the fact that we're not even using houses at this point. So from what you're saying, I agree that is definitely something that needs to make sure that it's at the forefront of making sure we're utilizing everything appropriately until its full extent, and keeping in mind that flexibility is key too.
Great. And then, moving forward, would we have an idea of what a maximum occupancy would be for the building?
Yeah, we're looking at targeting roughly 600 students for maximum occupancy. Obviously, depending on scheduling, again, you could go slightly above that, but with the 476 number, you could, I would say, comfortably fit the 600 at this point.
Thank you.
Any other questions or comments?
Just a question regarding the number that you came up for the $104,000. I know that's what your estimator that came up. Was that a conventional foundation for that property, or was there any type of soil samples done because I'm sure you guys are aware of what that property was 50, 60 years ago, and the stories that this district had to live with when it opened back in the blizzard of '78.
Yeah, absolutely. So, to your point, that component of further developing the documents, part of that work, the investigatory work, was advancing some geotech boring. So they did take a handful of samples, not only for soil quality, but also contaminants, as well as monitoring the groundwater out there. So that is going to continue to be monitored. And what those samples identified was the subsurface conditions of where the new facility will be constructed, sort of that northern parking area. That was the primary concern. It's the 3-story building. It's the heaviest part of the building. And based on the findings, they were favorable. And the estimates were based off of what those geotechnical findings were, as well as review from our structural engineer.
Any other questions, comments?
And Jen, just a question that you might be able to answer. Any of these reports that they have, are they get a copy of them?
Which reports? Your mic is off.
Mainly the one with the survey on where the building's gonna go, the ground soil and stuff like that.
Stuff like, I'm assuming that's gonna be extensive, like testing, correct? That's not just like one test, if I remember correctly from our meeting last night. That's gonna be throughout the project, basically, until something is permanently placed there. It's gonna, whether it's like where the building's gonna be placed, or whether it's gonna be, like where retainage is also gonna be put in, like for any like rainfall and stuff. I believe that's what was discussed yesterday. That's still, being determined and fleshed out.
Right, there is going to be
effect of the soil.
continued investigation. I mentioned groundwater monitoring. During construction, there'll be additional test pits. Those will also occur prior to determine the infiltration rate of the soil to address the groundwater. With those, it'll also be tested for multiple other things as well. But yeah, there is additional testing and investigation that will continue throughout the entire process.
Okay.
But the one, you've done some already, correct?
Yes.
That's what I'm saying, Jen. Those are the ones that if we could get a copy of them, or I would like a copy of them. Is that possible?
Sure, I can.
Yeah, that's
see
what
about
I'm saying, Jen, like
requesting
where
that,
we're at now, so as they monitor that, we can
Yeah.
monitor that right along with them on, the rise in water. And if the new building would affect the field in the back, because whenever it rains.
That was actually discussed at great extent yesterday about the whole field, and trying to see where parking will also go to not just benefit our staff and visitors, but also the people that would go and use those that field for any other city activities as well. So that is actually something that has not been set in stone yet. That is something that they're still working on, determining where they're going to place the parking, for example, and taking into account also about the rainfall for that field as well. So that's something that I know they're still working on, and they haven't decided yet exactly on how to address the issue of the waters in that field, in that particular area. That's the school property itself, as well as the parking. So that's something that they're still trying to work on.
And then that's the field in the back too, even though that's.
The city field, yes.
That's a city field,
Correct.
but.
That's the field I'm talking about.
Okay, excellent.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
And, so with that in mind, so 212 proposed parking spaces, that's not like official or approved yet. That's kind of just like the goal.
So 212 is what we currently have shown. That meets the city guidelines and regulations based on student capacity, based on the pre-K configuration and how many students are anticipated with parent drop-off, pickup, etc. So that is where the current numbers align. That 212, again, isn't set in stone. There is some flux there that was mentioned because we are still looking at access to the city fields, and so forth. So it we'll say roughly 212 at this point.
Okay.
And if I may add to that, actually, I think it's approximately an addition of 50 parking spots from what we currently have. So, like you said, it's a number that still is possibly may change, but the nice thing is that there is an additional 50, which from, just going to after-school events, that would be a huge help. Would make a huge difference to any after-school events being hosted there, so. Good question on that.
I just had one more question, sorry. So regarding the exterior building options that were chosen, could you just go over some of the kind of like the reasons that those two options were chosen? It definitely seems like natural lighting was a big one.
Yep. Just gonna grab my cheat sheet here. So yeah, absolutely. Natural lighting is critical in an educational space. What it does is there's numerous benefits for daylighting within the space. We do have some of the main prominent spaces, so actually they're up on the screen and you have them on your slides too. But so option one, the main reason why that was selected on the left is the amount of glazing and transparency into those public spaces. The largest portion of glass right here, sort of to the right of that angled piece, that is the new student dining space. So again, a highly utilized space on the first floor, right outside of the gymnasium and the auditorium. It could be used for after-hour programs as far as lobby space, gathering space, really right in the heart and the core of the new facility. So providing a lot of transparency into that space was critical in the design intent, but also the community gravitated towards it because of the prominence within the community. Additionally, the space on the left, on the second floor, that is the Library Media Center. Again, the technology hub of the building, really looking at the collaboration between all grade levels right at the front of the building within that space. So that is the transparency there. Real quick, the right image on the corner, again, we want to highlight specific aspects. Transparency, glazing is a way to do that. Additionally, with color, additionally with the mass, the forms, etc. So really looking at the corner condition and what space is within that. That space is actually a couple of these science classrooms. So really showcasing those at the corner of the facility here. Does that answer your question?
Yes, it does.
Okay.
Thank you.
Any other questions, comments? Thank you. Is there one last thing you want to add in, Anne?
Yes, so I also have just the process for the construction manager at risk and the commissioning agent RFP process, if.
Yes, okay, thank you.
So for the construction manager at risk, this is only for the pre-construction services that's being considered at this time for approval. The request for proposals was advertised February 17th. We also issued amendments subsequent to that date. The mandatory pre-bid meeting was held on February 22nd, and we had 4 prospective construction managers attend that. We received the responses from the proposers on March 10th. We actually received 2 of them, so they, per the request for proposal, they were to submit their proposals separately. So we had a technical proposal and a fee proposal. The technical proposal was opened and distributed to the subcommittee. The subcommittee evaluated that for a little over 2 weeks. We held, prior to interviews, they did complete just the technical proposals up to the interview scoring. We had the interviews held for the two proposers on March 28th, at which time the evaluating subcommittee finalized the technical proposal scoring. On the 29th, there was a public opening of the fee proposals, and at that time, the scoring was finalized, taking that into account. The proposer that scored highest for the construction managers is Shawmut Construction. Are there any questions on the construction manager at risk, pre-construction services only?
No.
So as far as going into the construction phase, there is, the district has the ability to proceed with Shawmut Construction if, and all of those fees, et cetera, to be negotiated at a later time. The commissioning agent services, the request for proposals it was advertised on February 20th. Subsequent amendments were issued the end of February and the beginning of March. 6 proposals were received on March 14th, and at that time, and a couple of weeks after that, bid leveling was done between all of the proposers, and basically ruling out one of the proposers that didn't show Massachusetts or Rhode Island experience. And the evaluation basically shows that Stephen Turner Inc. is the recommended commissioning agent here because the lower proposer is an outlier. And based on past experience with Stephen Turner, they are the proposed or recommended commissioning agent. Are there any
Thank
questions?
you. Questions, comments? No.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, next item, please.
Next item is the policy committee report.
Thank you. Attached in the packets, you received a purchasing a bidding policy. It was reviewed by our Director of Finance and our Superintendent. School committee member, Ms. Bouchain, and I reviewed the recommended changes, and we were in agreement that those changements were appropriate. Not sure if you guys have any questions regarding that.
If I could just ask one quick question. So where it states that all RFPs will be advertised on the district website and on BidNet Direct, that's already been standard operating procedure for us, right? That's just a matter of getting it in writing?
Yes, correct. So it was, used to be the City of Newport e-procurement website, which then morphed into the BidNet Direct. So we were just updating some of the language on that. Yep.
Yeah. Next item, please.
Next item is the building committee report.
So I won't repeat from what Mr. Murphy had summarized earlier in the meeting regarding the update for the new project. As we heard, the recommendations are what were recently discussed at the building committee meetings. So I want to avoid any additional time. I won't repeat from both those presentations from today. Next item, please.
Next item is action items. Number 1, consider and vote to approve recommendation of construction manager at risk.
Thank you. Now, this is the recommendation from the building committee. I'll entertain a motion to approve the construction manager at risk.
I'll make the motion to approve.
Thank you. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Thank you. All that say aye?
Aye.
Aye.
Number 2, consider and vote to approve recommendation of commissioning agent.
Thank you. I'll entertain a motion to approve, again, the recommendation from the building committee in regards to the commissioning agent.
I'll make a motion.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Thank you. All that say aye?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you. Next item.
Number 3, consider and vote to approve EPSD FEI AI3 amendment number 4.
Thank you. Mr. Enos?
If I just may provide some information. So as we have talked about previously, we received approximately $4 million from the Rhode Island Department of Education to upgrade the library space at RMS and as well as 6 of the science classrooms at RMS. Our work with AI3 that we're currently doing on Martin and with the design space for the library and for the science rooms, we are able to add their services that we need to incorporate the design elements for the RMS, for the library, turning that into a media center, much like Martin will have, and also to update the science classrooms as well. So their fee is going to be part of the money that we will be using, part of our fund balance. The reimbursement that we will receive from the Department of Ed will come through housing aid each June. So just wanted to provide that space for you. It's just allowing them to, it's really going to have them doing both now. They'll do both of the media spaces and both sets of the science classrooms for us. Thank you.
Thank you. In the contract, just to add on to what Mr. Eno said, the contract allows for that type of amendment, and it's at no additional cost to us. So, and the building committee also voted to approve that recommendation as well. Is there a motion to approve the AI3 amendment number 4?
I'll make the motion to approve.
Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Thank you. All that say aye?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you.
Number 4, consider and vote to approve Stage 3 schematic design for submittal to RIDE SBA.
Is there a motion to approve the Stage 3 schematic design? And as they had said, that is not final, but it is what is going to be submitted to RIDE.
I'll make the motion to approve.
Thank you. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Thank you. All that say aye?
Aye.
Aye.
Thanks. Next item, please.
Next item is announcements.
There is actually one announcement I do want to make about the Townie Pride Pantry. If you have any additional questions or regarding on when or how you can get those services, please contact your principals. They'll be able to detail what exactly are the hours that they will be open and the types of products that are also available there as well in detail. Are there any other announcements? All right. I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
I'll make the motion to adjourn.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Thank you. All that say aye?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you very much. Have a good night, everyone.